Welcome to Inaudible. My name is Jeremy Weiland, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Masterson. On this podcast, we discuss the weird, beautiful channeled messages found in the archives of LL Research, an organization dedicated to sharing spiritual information with the world. You can find out more about LL Research at llresearch.org. The archives contain transcripts of messages from allegedly discarnate sources who claim to hail from an organization they call the Confederation of Planets in service to the infinite creator. If you would like an audio version of the transcripts, please subscribe to Ryan's other podcast, Living, Love, and Light, available on all platforms. Ryan and I will try to provide an analysis and commentary on the philosophy described in these messages, identifying the common themes, and grappling with the application of this information to our human lives. Thanks for joining us on this journey. And how's it going, Ryan?
It's going well, Jeremy. Enjoying the cool weekend up here in the Pacific Northwest. How are you doing?
Enjoying the hot, humid weather in Richmond, Virginia, after getting back from a dry Colorado that was actually kind of hot.
Usually when I go through Colorado in the summer, it's been a while since I've been through, but I always get terrible sunburns. Maybe because I'm so high up, the air is so thin, relatively speaking, but I get roasted.
Yeah. Tasha and my wife insisted that I buy and bring SPF proof, like long shirts that had venting and stuff. And I went on a hike in jeans, long sleeve shirt, and a hat. And I felt great and never, ever got super sweaty. Like there's maybe a little bit of dust residue on my forehead. But other than that, nothing, no moisture.
Yeah.
And I was amazed. And that's what it's like out there for you guys, I guess.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's been a while since I've been back to the East Coast or to the South or anywhere east of the Rockies. And so it's been a while since I've had to deal with meaningful humidity, and I'm thankful. I'm so thankful for that. So
I'm starting to see where you're coming from, man.
Yeah, I like to warn
Gotta
people.
say.
I do like to warn people because I have plenty of friends that live elsewhere in the country. And, when they say, oh, I'm going to go visit the Seattle area, I'm going to go visit Portland, and it's in the summertime, I'll give them a warning, like fair warning. I know plenty of people who've just visited in the summer and then within a couple of years they move because the summers are great. They really are. They're dry. They're wonderful. They're sunny. Spring is a little wet, but winters and springs are wet. But other than that, it's a great place. So we just have a volcano nearby. I mean, that's the only thing. It's not really active, so we're cool for now. But for all the earth changes that the Confederation talks about in the 70s and 80s, I wonder if volcanoes were on their list of things to be active here in the United States.
Oh, I remember specifically one about Mount Rainier. Because that was right around the 80s that blew its top. Am I wrong about that?
St. Helens.
St. Helens, that's it. Yeah.
St. Helens, and I do remember that one. The questioner asked if it was a part of the earth changes, and I can't remember who they were channeling, but the entity said, yes, it is, and there's going to be more. But, now with what I'm getting to in the 1980, we're up to 1980 in the Living, Love, and Light podcast, the earth changes really center around a polar shift, which I find quite fascinating because if you read Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods, his whole book, he gets to the very end, his whole book is predicated, I guess his thesis is that perhaps there was something like, if not a polar shift, there was I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the crust of the earth actually shifts. The magnetic poles don't change, but the skin of the earth just kind of shifts. And that's what caused, mammoths to freeze almost instantly, because they were pushed way up north, like on a dime, and they just froze. But a fascinating book if you have not read Graham Hancock's Fingerprints of the Gods. But it's an interesting concept. Makes you think.
Yeah, I know that a lot of my friends and fellow Law of One enthusiasts are fans of that book. So, but I've never read it. I get the gist.
I will give Graham Hancock credit. The guy is a great writer. And I was hooked with Fingerprints of the Gods. And friends, if you have not read the book, the opening, he really hooks you in because he talks about this map of Antarctica. And on this map, you can see mountains and rivers and lakes. And when in the hell was the last time Antarctica had lakes, right? Or rivers? And yet there's a map. There are maps out there that exist with this information. And so Graham Hancock, he just grabs you he fishes for you, grabs you by the hook, and he starts reeling you in. And he starts trying to lay out this story about a history long forgotten, yet still, I mean, it's just such a cool story. But that opening section about Antarctica, and I'm like, how the heck? Yeah. How do they have maps of Antarctica? You know, it was last not frozen, perhaps 15,000 years ago. I think that's when they think ice really settled in. But what do I know? Anyway, fantastic book. I'll put it in the show notes.
Maybe I'll check it out. Yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes. So, yeah, he's a great writer, great storyteller. So, Jeremy, what's on our plate today?
Well, you had recommended or suggested that we look into the discipline of the personality. And I thought maybe it was time. I mean, we've taken a stab at the archetypes. That's good. I'm happy with what we delivered there, and I hope it whets everybody's appetite for more study and more episodes on that, because I think there's more to say, there's more perspectives to share, and it's a long process. The discipline of the personality is similarly long, but perhaps not quite as complex or abstract. It's something that comes up in Ra's messages. It's something that comes up in Kuo. And it's kind of a term of art for walking the path in this way that the Confederation often talks about. Being able to reflect on your life, being able to use your experiences in life as kind of exercises in opening your heart and understanding and accepting yourself, and opening a channel to intelligent infinity. All of these things play in and more. And I thought it might be a good place to start just talking about the term itself. And what do they mean by discipline? What do they mean by personality? And how do these things fit together? Does that seem maybe like a jumping off point?
That sounds great. And yes, I think it's fantastic because you've mentioned this term plenty of times. The Confederation has mentioned this term in my memory at least a few times. So it comes up, yet it's not something that I understand. And I would say, so this is our 17th episode, but this is the first episode that I don't have a lick of material in front of me. I have no resources. I have no clue. So this is basically going to be, at least from my perspective, a question and answer. But I think that's nice because this time around, I really get to focus on what you're talking about and what you're saying, rather than me focusing on like my resources that I had and then trying to, tie in your comments with that material. So I'm looking forward to how this is going to work out because I don't have anything to draw upon. I'm starting fresh, so I'm hoping you'll help lead me down the path to better understanding for this concept that gets thrown out ever so often.
Oh, I certainly hope so too. I'm winging it a little bit as well. I did look up some references, and I'm just hoping that in the process of talking about this and looking for quotes, that you don't have to edit together too much. We can keep it a little. I'm gonna see if I can soft shoe my way through all this, and maybe the listener will own a monorail in Springfield afterwards, and I'll have made my point.
Sure. Heck yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I just thought it would be good to start with the term itself and talk about what they mean by discipline and what they mean by personality, and then we can kind of reason into other stuff.
Yeah.
So discipline. Discipline is something that a lot of people think of as making yourself do something that you don't want to do, or engaging in a complex, difficult manner of honing the self from a kind of, I was going to say undisciplined, from just doing whatever the wind blows you to do, to having a focus to your life. There is an aspect of control involved in it. Discipline is often seen as self-control. And I've shared in the past Pema Chodron's view of discipline that I'll reiterate here, that it's not a rigid kind of control over yourself necessarily. It's not a judgment of yourself, certainly not. It is a willingness when you get off the path to go back on, to take the effort to go back on and go back to it, and then you stray and you go back to it, and you stray and you go back to it. You stray and go back to it. This kind of never giving up on yourself seems to be an important kind of capacity that we are building in third density, because it is so distracting. It is so confusing that it's entirely understandable that people stray, that people get caught up in the illusion. The illusion is designed to catch you up, to take your focus away. It's designed to be something that's challenging. So having this aggressive or acrimonious relationship with the illusion would not be useful from a spiritual evolution point of view. What is useful is to look at it as a tool for honing one's own ability to apply will.
I like that.
Sorry?
I like that explanation. Possibly. Can you reiterate do you remember what you just said?
Yeah. Discipline is more about honing your ability to apply your willpower, to apply your will, which free will, I remind the listener, is the first distortion. It comes before love and it comes before light.
Yeah. So I like that.
Free will. Yeah, free will is like the ultimate distillation of our entityhood, of our creatorship. It's our ability to, everything about the choice of polarity hinges on the fact that we are exercising our will to affect this.
Yeah. Jeremy, did you just come up with that definition? Because it reads very well. Discipline it's a noun, or it's a verb. It's honing your ability to apply will.
Well, I kind of cribbed it from the Confederation. Sorry.
All right. I'm just wondering how much credit I need to give you, how many points I need to award you, Jeremy.
Not very much, as it turns out.
I'll give you 5. It was still a good explanation.
Yeah, I would point the listener. So in this episode, I'm going to be completely frank. I told Ryan I was going to let it all hang out. Wish I was a little better prepared on the quotes, because I think one of the things that makes this podcast really useful is it's not just you pontificating. It's not just me pontificating. It's putting all of that in the context of the Confederation's message and putting that center. And I wish I had a little more to go on. But I do have some good readings to point the listener to if they are dissatisfied with what we're bringing to the table. Sure. And the first that I would point them at is May 6th, 2007. Fair warning. It looks like the LL Research site has a SSL certificate problem it's gonna look like it's like a hack site or something. It's not. They just forgot to renew their certificate that puts the little lock icon in the URL address window. Don't worry about it. It should be fine. But also visit at your own risk, because I don't want the liability. Anyway, but I've had this happen to my site, so I kind of know what's going on. In any case, there is a part where they talk about control and discipline, and I had it here. Got it highlighted. Control helps you, or perhaps we would use the word discipline. Discipline helps you to maintain the focus of who you are and why you are here. It is not that this discipline is a judging discipline or an attempt to whip yourself into shape. You are not here to judge. You are here to love. And so the work of each and every seeker is primarily and fundamentally the work of being. Just a very short little blurb. And they reiterate this later on where they say, quote, "Control is definitely necessary, for without self-control and discipline, the spiritual seeker may constantly find itself forgetting to keep the focus." And they talk a lot about this concept of focus, and it's something that I've been thinking a lot about too, because it seems like the evolution of consciousness and awareness hinges a lot on how we are able to focus that, flashlight beam of awareness, to see more and more through the illusion and see different aspects of it. From first density, where we don't have really any awareness at all, except as one of being, to second density, where we're starting to have an awareness of the outside world, but we don't have the reflective ability. We don't have the spirit complex that somehow provides this reflective ability. It's kind of how I think about it. Mm-hmm. And then in third density, when we do have a spirit complex, in addition to the mind and body complex, and that affords us finally the ability to conceive of the self, not simply as a species, not simply as like part of a system of creatorship, but a self, a sub logos, right? Mm-hmm. And so in order to be a self, we have to be able to act upon something that is not self. We have to be able to relate to an other self that can provide a mirroring effect. This mirroring effect is how we recognize ourselves. We recognize ourselves, I believe, in others. Our individuality. I saw a documentary about this. I can't remember what it was called, but there was like a part at the end, and they were saying that, there are actual kids who have been like raised by wolves.
Yes, there have.
It's nuts. And the way that they described it, I'm probably getting a little bit of this wrong, but it made a big impression on me. So have mercy on me, listeners. The way they described it is that they didn't have self-consciousness. They had a pack consciousness where they were the pack. In the same way that my arm doesn't have a consciousness of being an arm, it's just part of me. It does have an awareness of being an arm on some level, but not in some sense that would recognize itself as an arm, qua an arm, right? So the idea is that self-consciousness is a social construct. Self-consciousness is a kind of collective thing that we create in each other. And it's why people like hermits, people who live alone for a long time, tend to degrade their ability to relate to other people, not just language-wise, not just references or social niceties or conventions or anything like that, but as a self at all. We reflect back to each other and we see what we like and what we don't like. And that provides the crucial feedback that allows us to create a self and something to exercise the will to hone that self with in the first place. Now, I've put together quite an argument here, and I appreciate Ryan for being supportive and nodding. What do you think of that? Because I'm not exactly talking about law like Ra or Kuo or Confederation stuff. I'm kind of speculating here.
The first thing I was thinking about when we talk about discipline is, oddly enough, how often do you try to define the word discipline? How often do you try to define any word that you use or any idea that you apply? But my first foray into defining discipline was through Jocko Willink and his podcast or his book. He's got a book called Discipline Equals Freedom. And the guy is all about discipline. I guess as a former Navy SEAL, you kind of have to be very disciplined in order to succeed at that job, which he did succeed. But I remember someone asked him how he would define discipline. And he said, discipline is doing what you're supposed to do. And that's it. And that's so hard. First, you got to figure out what it is you're supposed to do, and then you got to do it. It seems so simple. It is simple, not easy, but it's simple. But tying that in with the argument that you've just proposed about how we use others as a mirror for feedback about how we want to develop ourselves into the people we want to be. I guess it makes sense. I've only got just a few threads of connection starting to pull these together, but it makes sense to me that you see what inspires people to exercise and eat clean, or what inspires people to go back to school and get more training in say computer science rather than working at a front desk as a receptionist. There's something there that they're searching for. Perhaps it's something that they see in someone else. And I'll tell you from my experience, I might have told the story before, but I was living in Boston. I had just left the music industry, if you want to call it that. I played in a party band, but I had just left music. I was working as essentially a receptionist at a gym, signing people into the gym. I was about 27, and I met this Mexican national, this young guy who was living in Boston, and we were shooting the shit one day, and I asked him what he did, and he said, "Oh, I'm a surgeon." My eyes about popped out of my head. And I'm like, "You're a surgeon? How old are you?" He goes, "I'm 27. I was 27. And that was just one of a few very key moments at my life in that time where I saw what other people were doing with their lives that inspired me, that I should be doing more. I should be trying harder to be a better person, to be smarter, to work harder, to do something to reach my potential. But it was those interactions with other people that showed me something about myself. And then at that point, I had to make the decision. What is it that I want? And do I have the discipline to do it? And that was its own adventure. But what you're saying makes sense if I really put together all the stories that I have in my head as far as how I relate with other people and how they either inspire me or whatever the opposite of inspire is to not do something. Because
that teaches just as much, right?
I'd argue it actually teaches better. I take it back. People often don't learn those lessons. They don't. Often people are just as bad as what the others that they claim to dislike. However, when you recognize that you have control over your actions and perceptions, and you see that in someone else, if you recognize that within you, and you take ownership of that, if you can exercise that discipline to do the work necessary, then yeah, I think you can change.
Well, we're jumping ahead of wherever I wanted to go, but this is good because was the Navy SEAL's name Jocko? Is that what you said?
Jocko. His real name's John,
Jocko.
But everyone knows him by Jocko.
Okay. I think he's onto something. I love the succinct definitions that leave the person who hears them a lot of work to unravel them. And I think when he says, like knowing what you want and then applying the will to do it, right? Mm-hmm. That's what it was.
It was doing what you're supposed to do.
And so you have to figure out, what are you supposed to do and do I want to do it? To me, that's the what are you supposed to do is, what is your desire? Desire being this great force in the creation that draws us towards the upward spiraling light. And then applying the will to pursue your desire is also, in a way, related, but separate. Because there's lots of people who desire things, like I desire to lose weight. I have not yet found sufficient desire that yokes my will to it, right? Mm-hmm. And that, I think the Confederation has described it in those terms before. So, that to me makes a lot of sense, and it sounds like right in line with what I was saying, that it's kind of this way of achieving something, putting yourself in a place where you are ready for a transformation of some kind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if to get somewhere else where that somewhere else is a new you in some way, even if we're talking about from the archetypal point of view, right? You have to like put the effort in, and you have to kind of have an idea of what it is that you're looking for to put the effort into. Yeah. Now, there are two ways to, in my opinion, and I think I read this somewhere in Confederation stuff. I'm pretty sure I'm on solid ground. There are two ways to exercise the will in order to achieve this transformation, this initiation, this change in yourself. Evolution is about constant change. One is a kind of control, a kind of locking down and making yourself almost as an adversary of yourself do something, right? You whip yourself into shape, like they said, and that's a little more endemic of the indicative of the negative path. I won't say that like there aren't positive people who do this. I mean, but it is a somewhat unwholesome, unkind way to treat yourself. Just looking at it without any details or in the abstract. But the other way of using your will to achieve your desire is much more indicative of the positive service to others path, and that is acceptance. You see, this is right in line with what they mean by discipline of the personality. It is walking a path where they describe it in with 3 steps: know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. That, in short, when Don asked what the discipline of the personality is what they said. And I think it makes a lot of sense, because if on the negative path, accepting yourself would be not accepting anything but what you desire to be, and honing your will to push your round peg through that square hole with all of your might, with all of your spiritual will. And then your will becomes a very strong force that can defy the trajectory of creation back to the creator. Remember that in a past episode, we read an excerpt where they said, everybody's heading back to the creator, but those on the service of self path, on the negative path, are trying to break, right? Yes. They're trying to slow themselves down. And it's almost like the potential difference they're creating, they can then use as a kinetic for their purposes.
Yes. Creates tension.
Yeah.
Creates tension and heat. I still like the way that you put it, that, that tension, that friction that creates a friction, or, Yeah.
It makes an intuitive sense to me. I can't speak for the listener, and I apologize if it doesn't. But just as important is, or just as powerful, I should say, is self-acceptance, of using the will and using the desire to love yourself and to love others on the same terms, recognizing that your selfhood is largely a mutual creation between you and other selves. And learning over and over and over, going through the discipline over and over and over of accepting your flaws, of accepting those things that you don't like about yourself, and learning how to love yourself over and over and over again. That is, my friends, nearly, if not more hard than forcing yourself to be something that you want to be.
Here, I'm running into a wall a little bit with the acceptance of self. And I can only speak to my experience, but I wonder if so many humans' inability to accept oneself is because so many of us realize we're worthy and capable of more, and we don't live up to that. And so there's this shame of, I'm not putting in the work. I'm not worthy because I don't deserve this, because I'm not putting in the work, and I'm capable of it, but I'm not doing it. That's a whole rat's nest. But I would say I could come into this with a self-help book of, think positive. I'm sorry for the tone of voice, everyone. Think positive, be happy, love yourself, Love your
Like Stuart Smalley.
Like what?
Like Stuart Smalley on that SNL skit, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me.
I don't know that reference. I'm sorry.
Oh,
I'll have to
darn
check
it.
it out. I'll have to check it out. But
5 years makes a difference, folks.
that's it. I guess it does. But I wonder if that is an issue with why. This is something I'm fascinated with. What's people's problem? What is your problem, everyone? What's my problem? It's all kind of, in my mind, it's all kind of the same thing. We are capable of so much as individuals. We're born with supercomputers as our brains. We are capable of so many incredible things. And yet we live in this illusion, this culture that easily sucks us into the easy things that just don't have a lot of value. And I wonder if there's this underlying guilt or underlying shame that we don't seek out, or it's so hard to get past your comfort zone to really become who you can be.
I could not agree with you more, and I think it's very, very insightful that you sort of like put it in the inverse, right? So if the discipline of the personality is on the positive side is accepting yourself, and that's how you can build power, then the powerlessness that we must feel when we don't feel that we can discipline the personality must be the source of a lot of self-doubt and a lot of powerlessness. And there is a Ra quote that talks about this specifically, and I would love to read it right now because I think it fit in. It's a little longer, but work with me.
Perfect.
52.7 is session 52, question 7. Questioner. Am I correct then in assuming that the discipline of the personality, knowledge of self, and control, shall I say, in strengthening of the will would be what any fifth density entity would see as those things of importance? Ra. I am Ra. In actuality, these things are of importance in third through early seventh densities. The only correction and nuance that we would make is your use of the word control. It is paramount that it be understood that it is not desirable or helpful to the growth of understanding, may we say, of an entity by itself to control thought processes or impulses, except where they may result in actions not consonant with the law of one. Control may seem to be a shortcut to discipline, peace, and illumination. However, this very control potentiates and necessitates the further incarnative experience in order to balance this control or repression of that self which is perfect. Instead, we appreciate and recommend the use of your second verb in regard to the use of the will, acceptance of the self, forgiveness of the self, and the direction of the will. This is the path towards the disciplined personality. Your faculty of will, here we go. Your faculty of will is that which is powerful within you as co-creator. You cannot ascribe to this faculty too much importance. Thus, it must be carefully used and directed in service to others, for those upon the positively oriented path. And then they go on to say, there is great danger in the use of the will as the personality becomes stronger, for it may be used even subconsciously in ways reducing the polarity of the entity. But what they talk about earlier, your faculty of will is powerful in you. And I've felt it in myself. It held me back for a long time. And it still probably holds me back on lots of things, like exercise. That I understand how much raw will that if I had the desire, I could bring to bear. And it scares me, right?
Yeah.
Because then what does the law of one say? When you take action, when you work upon the creation, now you have a responsibility. When you are able to use that power, it comes with a balancing form of responsibility, and a responsibility to use it in ways that align with all of your desires, with all of the desires of the people that you're trying to serve. Remember, we're talking about desires in a broad sense, not just pleasing people, right? This is like spiritual evolution desire, not just, let's buy everybody a Lamborghini.
Sure.
So this acceptance and forgiveness of the self that then allows you to direct the will also provides further opportunities for learning, for catalyst, for opportunities to let yourself down. And then you have another opportunity to accept yourself. Instead, on the negative path, you are continually trying to push yourself forward and make yourself into something that we all recognize on a fundamental level, that if separation is an illusion, then the desire to achieve further and further and further separation, self from self, self from other self, is a kind of foray into falsity, a foray into empowering the illusion. And that also requires more and more and more use of the will.
It's interesting.
So the discipline of the personality, I kind of think of as extending both to the positive and the negative. Of course, those of Ra are mostly interested in the positive, service to others use, but the service to self is worth looking at just for the contrast, right?
Yeah. Regarding the concept of acceptance, I remember when my brother used to be a personal trainer, and I can't remember what brought this up, but on the idea of, weight loss goals, strength goals, he would say, hey, if you don't reach those goals, that's your fault. There's a way to get there. If you get on the path and you fall off, then you didn't want it bad enough. But that's okay. And that was the kicker for me. There's no judgment. There was no judgment from that. He'll put together a plan for you. He'll push you. He'll help you get to where you wanted to go. But if you yourself don't want to get there, bad enough, because it does take discipline and work. If you don't get there because you don't want it bad enough, that's okay. He's okay with that. Are you? People want to feel like they're okay with that. But that's the challenge. That's the personal battle you yourself have to fight, is what are your expectations of yourself? And, like Jeremy, is your desire to, you say lose weight, is that a literal desire? Or is there something else that's kind of like a proxy? Is there some other type of personal control you're looking for in your life, and that's just simply the avenue? I'm just throwing that out here, but, people are funny, and it's like you go down one path thinking, oh, I want this, but maybe there's something deeper under there, or maybe there's, something tangential to it that you haven't quite recognized or you haven't latched on to. And, and for people I know, in this, weight loss and exercise is such a huge industry in this country. It's just ridiculous. So, you see lots of advertisements for it that just constantly is kind of in your face that, hey, you should be doing this and that. But yeah, if you don't want it bad enough, that's fine. That is fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, I think that people like your brother see their role as being mirrors to their clients, faithful mirrors, not judging, but sometimes, especially with weight loss and with, body dysmorphia or anything like that, like, what do people not want to do? They don't want to look in the mirror. They're afraid of the mirror, and they're afraid of letting themselves down again. I know that, like, I've had lots of dietary, challenges. I've gone out there and tried to change my diet, and I've been successful for a while, but I always slip back. And I will say, every time I try again, it gets easier. Every time I try again, I learn something about myself. So I don't feel a whole lot of shame. I just feel like, went to the cardiologist this past week, and he's like, hey, you got to cut the carbs. Hey, you got to cut the sugar, stuff like that. You got to get some exercise where you're getting the heart rate up. And I'm like, okay. We're talking with my wife, and we're going to make changes, and we're going to make it more sustainable. I'll fall off the wagon again, but this time maybe I'll get back up on it and do it right, get more exercise in and all that. It's really about, in a lot of ways, what we're doing when we exercise this level of will is there's all sorts of, and I think exercise and diet and all this are great because we see it as just, we got to do these things and then we're done. Mm-hmm. Like, we just got to stick with this and then we're done. But what we forget is that choosing to do that has all sorts of ancillary effects that then you have to negotiate as well. And that's usually where you get hung up. Oh, when I go to the bar, I can't just get a beer. I have to think about what I'm drinking. Oh, when I go out to lunch with, a client or with a coworker, I have to be the guy who's like, let me have a salad. It's just, and like, there's nothing wrong with salad. I love salad. I love eating salad.
I love rabbit
but
food.
Like, but I my feeling is like, the lettuce isn't always great at a restaurant. I love the salad I had,
with the cheese.
I mean, like, I think like I would rather have a hamburger at McDonald's than a salad, you know what I mean? Just because, man, you know what they care about.
Yeah.
But this whole idea of like having let ourselves down and being scared of letting ourselves down again, I think has a lot to do with it. And I think it even has to do with a lot of the emotional discipline that we try to put upon ourselves to be better people than to be the people that we want to be. But we let ourselves down there all the time too. And it's so, so important to have a tool like meditation or a therapist who can mirror to you. Therapy is also a very important tool for learning to know and accept yourself. No, I would never, in fact, I think I should say that more often, because a lot of people use new age stuff to bypass problems where maybe a professional mirror.
Yeah.
A professional mirror would be really useful.
Yeah.
And my wife often says, hey, you should bring that up more often because it could help people. And I want to say I've gone to a therapist. I have benefited tremendously from it. And there's absolutely no shame in it. I've learned stuff about myself that I don't think I would have learned through meditation.
Yeah.
We need all of it. You know what I mean? Like we need all of it.
I just listened to Joe Rogan interview Yeonmi Park, the North Korean defector. And if you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to check it out. It's extremely dark. Her description of North Korea is sobering, to put it lightly. But in this episode, she brought up that when she finally got to the States and she went to Columbia University in New York, and she had some friends that were encouraging her to go to therapy. Because she had PTSD and trauma, from her living in North Korea. And in the podcast, she's making a joke about it. But Joe Rogan said something quite insightful. He basically said that, these days you have to hire someone to listen to you. And to kind of like what you said, I'm going to paraphrase for Joe Rogan, but like what you said, they're a professional mirror. You have to hire someone that you can talk to about your deepest feelings and your thoughts and your experiences. What does that say about the state of our relationships that we can't go to maybe our spouse or our brother or our best friend, or we feel like we can't go to, we feel like we can't go to somebody in our personal life. Oftentimes, I will say, therapists can be very good at knowing what questions to ask to kind of get you to think about certain things in your life. But oftentimes people just need someone to talk to. And I loved Rogan's comment. What does it say about the state of our relationships that we have professional therapists because so many people feel like they don't have someone close to them in their personal life who will hear them in a non-judgmental way and just hear them. I thought it was insightful.
No, absolutely. I could not agree more. I am, I'm not afraid to agree with Joe Rogan, but I will say that I take that very insightful comment from him as a challenge. Our service is needed. Our listening, our care for our fellow human being is needed. It is too much to expect a professionalized industry to do the work of human civilization and relate to each other in a way where we can help heal each other or help each other heal, right?
Yeah. I thought the same thing.
This is why it's so needed for us to walk our paths. It's got to be your own choice, I know, but there's so many people who need you, listener. They need you. And how can you be there for them? Disciplining the personality, not through an act of violence on yourself, but through showing the same compassion and an inability to give up on yourself that others need to see in you.
So, Jeremy, let's keep pushing because we've talked about the idea of discipline, right?
Yeah.
But
so personality will go very quick.
Yeah, but what is, let's go. Help me out.
By and this is Jeremy Weiland, speculating, and okay. Don't take this with a huge grain of salt. But by personality, they just mean the outer personality. They mean the conscious waking ability that we have to execute on plans, on our desires, etc. The personality is what we present to others. That is the surface. It is the interface between our subconscious and their subconscious through these two consciousness bumping up against each other and having these facets where they grind in these areas, they're smooth in these areas, they get along here, they don't get along there. Well, that can be worked on. The negative way to do it would be to just make the surface interface into something perfect and pristine. Those of Ra say that negative entities, people who are polarized towards service of self, often select bodies that are very attractive and very healthy because they are presenting this very attractive, healthy, desirable self in order to manipulate. And that's their path, and that's fine. But for the positive adepts, for those who want to walk the service to others path, we have to take a more authentic route to disciplining the personality that comes from the bottom up, not from the top down. That's my view. And so the whole idea of discipline of the personality is that when we know the self, accept the self, and become the creator, and not just when we achieve this, right? The constant work of doing this in a human life, in a third density life, creates a kind of draw, a kind of almost like a vacuum pulling in the love and the light that we need in order to progressively more and more accept ourselves, progressively more and more forgive ourselves, progressively more and more learn how to use the power we are building for what we truly desire. And if you believe that you have chosen service to others, then you probably have, and your life is going in a trajectory. And so the more that you can align your daily actions, your daily thoughts, most importantly, your thoughts, with this broader desire, with this deep, authentic thing that you have found in your heart, that seed of deity that all of us have, that we have closed off so often because of humiliation and fear and all of these things, the more that you can radiate and give freely and know that you will be replenished when you give, the more that you build a power that people will notice, that you will notice, and you will have more and more responsibility to use that power in the way that your desire, your true desire, dictates. It's a big responsibility.
So let me see if I can translate this into meathead. So we've got, I would analogize this with disciplines of the body, where you do your running, you do your yoga, you stretch, you exercise with full range of motion, with power, moving from the ground up. Disciplines of the mind. Maybe you meditate, you're able to focus, you keep clear thought. I'm not so good with disciplines of the mind, but I can relate with disciplines of the body. But discipline of the personality is a corollary, but moving along the spiritual path. And if your path is service to others, then those disciplines of the personality is, as you've kind of said, be open, right? Be accepting, all that other stuff. Does that sound, close?
100%.
Okay.
Right along with me. There's another Ra quote that I'd like to bring up that kind of goes into this, and I'm gonna pick the part that I want to talk about, not the whole thing.
Okay.
It's session 52, question 2. So Don's asking about, hey, the discipline of the personality, does that have anything to do with how UFOs fly? And, but I think that the answer is actually can be taken broader than just in some sort of technological sense. And Ross says, to the disciplined entity, all things are open and free. The discipline which opens the universes opens also the gateways to evolution. The difference is that of choosing either to hitchhike to a place where beauty may be seen or to walk step by step, independent and free. In this independence to praise the strength to walk and the opportunity for the awareness of beauty. The hitchhiker instead is distracted by conversation and the vagaries of the road and, dependent on the whims of others, is concerned to make the appointment in time. The hitchhiker sees the same beauty, but has not prepared itself for the establishment in the roots of mind of the experience. Now, there's a lot I'd like to say about this. First of all, when they are talking about this in the context of technology, I often think spiritual technology, maybe something like drugs, maybe something like ritual, that can bypass the need to reckon with your full self and to accept your full self, but instead the shortcut there. So you can see a lot of the cool stuff. Because people have experiences when they walk the Adept's Path. Mm-hmm. They do have experiences. We know this, and it's not to put undue emphasis on those experiences, on those maybe psychedelic or transformative visions or, out of body experiences, what have you. It runs the gamut, right? But what they're saying is that by bringing your full self in a disciplined sense, you are then fully free to walk about in the universe unfettered. And if you are using tools, if you are forcing yourself through some artificial means to get there, then you're dependent upon that crutch. You're dependent on that, and you don't have freedom. You kind of see what you see, and who knows if you can get back to it, right? Mm. And I will also point out, they see this, the hitchhiker sees the same beauty, but has not prepared itself for the establishment in the roots of mind. What did we just talk about last episode? The roots of mind are where these fundamental expenditures of psychic energy occur. This archetypal mind that structures kind of the narrative of what is possible in evolution. Which way we can go, like roughly speaking, in terms of energy, not in terms of like the specifics of how everything distills into third density, waking consciousness, but at a deep level, when you're working with the personality, because you're working on the self at a deep level, and then the personality reflects that inner work, instead of creating a facade that hides what's going on inside, right? Like the negative path. Does that make any sense?
Well, what do you think the difference is between hitchhiking and walking step by step, using Ra's analogy or metaphor?
You have built the strength personally. You do not depend on other things to be able to see and walk where you want. If you're hitchhiking, as long as nobody picks you up, you're not going anywhere. And you're not in control. Now, there's nothing wrong with not being in control. Accepting our lack of control on things is a very important part. But at a certain point, if we are exposing ourselves to insights that we do not have the discipline to execute upon, we are taking upon ourselves a responsibility that we cannot prosecute. And this is what can create karmic issues. This is what can create situations where we create more catalyst for ourselves than is necessary. It's all learning. Everything will be fine in the end. The question is really about, how do you want to get there? And there is a peace that comes from the slow, methodical understanding, uncovering of the self, piece by piece, unveiling the heart, little by little, in these ways that seem very slow and require a lot of patience. But when we make progress, it's real progress. It's not progress that will get taken away if the guy that picks us up on the hitchhiker's path decides he doesn't want to take us along anymore. We're not in charge there. Does that make sense?
It does. And
your face doesn't say so.
well, I guess I'm trying to tie it back to applicable terms, trying to take it out of the ethereal ideas and, kind of the wishy-washy, abstract, and actually consolidate it down into an action.
Let me see if I can come up with an example of this.
Great.
So let's say at work, you are having a hard time getting along with your coworkers. You're having a hard time working together. And so productivity is going down and it's making you distressed, and it's making other people distressed. Well, one way to deal with that would be to put on a persona of gregariousness, of positivity, maybe a kind of toxic positivity, we could say.
Toxic.
Something that almost,
Yes.
something that almost seems manipulative because it's not coming from the heart. It's a behavior that you are aping. And so you can get a long way. And I think a lot of people in business get a long way by adopting this persona that allows them to do a lot of business. But what people find is when they go out for a drink with them afterwards, or when they, go over to visit their families, they can't get past the surface level of niceness. There's not as much kindness to balance with that niceness. That kindness is not something that you can simply ape. It comes from having suffered, having experienced pain, having looked at yourself in a deep way, and recognizing that everybody feels that pain. Everybody feels lonely. And that a lot of times just pleasing or glad handing people is not the service that they're asking for. And so working on your learning about yourself and accepting yourself so that you can be there for other people, not the way that gets you the deal signed or that gets you the promotion, but the way that's truly there for the other person on their terms, not on your terms, on their terms. Well, my friend, that takes a lot of discipline. That takes a lot of acceptance of yourself and the ability to put your ass on the line for them. You know what I mean?
I do. It makes me think of a friend that I have. He's not much younger than I am, but I used to teach high school percussion programs with him over a decade ago. And this guy is very funny. Not only is he wicked smart, but he's very funny. So he's very funny. But when I was teaching with him, and at that time, he was about 20 years old.
I'm starting to think this is a Goodwill Hunting kind of situation, but okay, I'll let you tell the story.
No, I can't help but say wicked smart whenever I say smart.
It's so funny.
Jeremy, my first night in Boston, I kid you not, I was next to Fenway. We were going to a bar. And this parking attendant said, "You can't park your car there." I'm like, it's real. It's real. Anyway.
Those poor people.
Straight Bostonian. But anyway, everything this guy said was a joke. Everything. Or it was said in jest. And the band director asked him one day, he said, "Why is everything that you say a joke? You're never serious with what you're saying." And he's like, "Well, if I joke all the time, then no one has to take me seriously if I get something wrong. If I joke and I do it right, people can take it seriously, just you take it with jest. But if I'm wrong, people don't have to take me seriously, and then I'll be okay." And that was one candid moment that really helped me understand my friend. And I saw him kind of in a different light from there on, almost like his humor was a shield. And I've heard this from other really funny people or even comedians, that their humor is something of a shield. And
some of the loneliest people out there, I've thought often.
Yes. And it's kind of sad because they are funny and that humor can draw people to them. But if you're not if you don't let people see the real side of you, that's just what I thought of when you said, bringing up that example, just that facade that some people create. And Yeah, just makes me think.
Didn't I say that the personality part wouldn't take very long?
Wouldn't take very long.
But there's a quote that I'd like to bring up on this matter that might dial this in a little bit.
Please.
Hopefully it's not going to take too long. It's from January 5th, 1997. And they talk about personality in this way. The personality that you are, may we say, is an artifact of distortions that have been created by the choices that you have made in pulling from the archetypal and racial mind those elements which you have decided to work upon within your incarnation. Edit, just don't take racial mind too seriously. They don't necessarily mean, what we mean. Although each entity is unique, then each is standing from material that is very deep within the unconscious mind that links all sublogoi with the identity of the logos. The logos in potentiation cannot be said to have personality. By the action of free will, the potentiated logos becomes that intelligent energy in which the seeds of personality are sown. Each of you springs from one soil. More than this, each of you springs from one kind of seed. Through the circles and cycles of life after life, and density upon density, through the processes of seemingly slow-moving time, you have created the distortions that identify you as unique. So part of the goal of one who wishes to play that instrument of personality is to move through each distortion to find the parent stem that all share. Then when one has more of a feeling of those things which are congruent from person to person, one may then move back up the trunk of the consciousness into those branches of conscious thought that ramify into the personality that you express at a present moment, such as this one. Were each personality not to have come from one source, it would be an entirely different thing to learn the disciplines of this particular instrument that you possess, that you have created up to this point in your cycles of manifestation. But you can stand upon firm ground in receiving information from any other human source, because each is most assuredly and truly a distortion conglomerate whose roots are identical to your own. This is why so much can be learned in the interaction of person to person. Moving deep enough, one treads common ground with all entities. It is equally important to grasp the common ground and to grasp the peculiarities and specialties of your particular instrument. And they go on to talk about the emotional work. I would also recommend that people look at this January 5th, 1997 reading. And we'll put all this in the show notes, I promise. And there's more in here that I would read from, but, I think that kind of lays out what is this personality that they're talking about. I don't think I was that far off. Like it's a complex of distortions that you have accumulated through choice, right? And then you are working on evolution, on understanding yourself in this archetypal way through the contrast and comparison with other choices of personality complexes, distortion complexes. I know that was a little bit thick, that quote, but just rewind, listener, if you need to listen to it again. I think it puts a very fine point on what it is that we are disciplining.
We are disciplining.
What you got, Ryan?
Well, I'm just trying to say it back to you in my own words, but we are disciplining our iteration of like the one personality, the one whole personality that we are all connected to. And we're one aspect of it, but it's that we are trying to come into tune with.
Yeah, there's a skill. There's a skill that comes from learning how to play the instrument that is that constructed personality, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a small quote here that I would just tack on to the end.
Please.
Now, when you have more or less begun to identify the tones that your instrument can produce, and this is the work of many lifetimes, you can move forward. These tones are emotions, so called by your culture. The music that the personality plays is a music made of pure emotions when the discipline of the personality is somewhat advanced. This gets into the purified emotions, right?
Yes.
However, as in any entity attempting to learn to play an instrument, the sounds produced by one who has not practiced can be discordant and unpleasant to the ear. And in most cases among your peoples, those who have not yet learned discipline produce many unpleasant tones. And I see in that your example of your teaching buddy who was afraid of producing those tones.
Yes.
He would have gotten good information if he had, in a spontaneous and unstudied expression of self, simply been himself and learned, modified, moved on. But this is an acceptance of a responsibility and a duty to yourself that some people find very off-putting. Some people find very scary.
Yes. About my friend, our friendship, never ended, though we did kind of fall out of contact, but our teaching relationship ended when he basically got fired from the band director. And as he was getting fired, basically, he told the band director, he said, "You treat me like a child." And the band director said, "Because you act like a child." And it's like, the lessons of life are going to come at you. And if you're somewhat closed off, those lessons pile up behind that dam that you've built. But that dam is not going to last forever.
No, and it's going to build up a lot of friction.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the ability to use that because you've decided to do the negative path, well, it's going to lead to suffering.
Yes.
It's going to lead to catalysts that you were going to perceive as negative, even though catalyst doesn't have positivity or negativity to it. We're the ones that put it on it.
I was going to say, I like to think that, I think we all can agree, I would hope, that through suffering comes growth. Either you're dealing with a challenge, there's a lesson to learn, and that suffering, exemplifies the lesson. But if you want to grow, it's either you get outside your comfort zone or you handle a new situation that really challenges you. There's some aspect of suffering that accompanies that growth. And we can choose to grow little by little, or we can choose to grow by just letting it all stack up and letting it dump on us. And the way that I'm relating to this aspect of the disciplines of the personality with regard to personal spiritual growth is, can I be more open? And can I let little lessons, little reflections of myself come in, little lessons, little bits and tastes of suffering so that I can slowly grow step by step, rather than trying to shut it all off, block off all feedback, all suffering, and then let that dam break and let it just pile on top of me. So my friend could probably use this idea of disciplines of the personality, because it's how, forget spirituality for a minute. How is he growing personally? How is he growing mentally and emotionally when you shut off all that feedback that you get from others? And I don't know what type of introspection he does as using other people as mirrors, because you can still get feedback yourself. I've heard some candid talk from quote unquote funny people. They, some of them realize exactly what's going on, but they can't seem to shut that off. So, I don't think they're naive by any means, but no. That's just maybe their challenge that they've got to deal with.
Yeah. And like in a lot of their lives, they have conflict, because there's no honesty. Like there is honesty, but in this really superficial way, right? Mm-hmm. There's a Hatan from 1983, August 14th, 1983. I may have read it before because it's one of my favorite Hatan quotes, mm-hmm. but I think it speaks to this.
Okay.
Here we go. We give this instrument a vision it does not understand. This instrument sees the hammer descending upon the anvil and the rock breaking. We attempt to say to this instrument that which is not tempered will break. Go through the fire of experience willingly, my friends, and be tempered a bit at a time, that with experience you may bend and learn and become stronger and serve more and more that great ideal that you so cherish. On the surface, the spiritual path seems poetic and dramatic and will attract many who will become weak-hearted. No, my friends, the spiritual path is for those who are tough and who wish to become tougher. Perfect compassion involves an unbelievable personal discipline. For how in this great illusion can you naturally believe that all others are one with you?
Yeah.
Mic drop.
Mic drop.
I love that so much.
Can you reread that last sentence or the last couple, just the hard-hitting one?
The last two sentences. Yeah. No, my friends, that the spiritual path is for those who are tough and wish to become tougher. Perfect compassion involves an unbelievable personal discipline. For how in this great illusion can you naturally believe that all others are one with you? It comes from in here.
That's good.
It doesn't come from people giving you the right faces, right? It comes from you deciding what your face is, what you believe in, what your principles are. And this is how we live as spirits, not as animals reacting to stimuli and being afraid and protecting ourselves, but without any need to cover ourselves or adorn ourselves or show ourselves in a superficial light, to express freely from our heart. That's what we're learning here.
That's fantastic. That line, those two
lines.
Those
1980, you are getting into the hatans that are magnifique. I mean, they are just the 1980s ones while the raw contact is going on. Oh my God, Hatan just gets so good. It's really some of my favorite. You know, that communication one from Hatan?
Yeah.
That's in that time period.
Okay.
Like, it's just so good.
Nice. That one hits hard because that's the forever struggle, is trying to figure out this love and understanding, opening up that green ray chakra or that heart ray chakra. When I look at other people and I see other people, I see aspects of myself, certainly, but I see other people, and a lot of them annoy me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Stephen Timon, who is a retired philosophy professor who's, former, he's still a Kuo channel because he taught us in our circle this past weekend. But he wrote a book called A Fool's Phenomenology, Archetypes of Spiritual Evolution. And it's a tough book for a lot of people to read, but it was really instrumental on my path. I recommend it to anybody who really resonates with it like I did. And one of the things he says in there is kind of a confessional. He's like kind of talking for himself, about himself, reflecting on this larger process that he finds himself engaged in lifetime to lifetime. And he says, it's one thing to look at other selves. I'm paraphrasing quite a bit here because he's a great writer and I can't remember it. But he says, it's one thing to look at other selves, see the self, and grapple with that. Grapple with what you like about yourself, grapple what you don't like about yourself. But then sometimes you see another self. In fact, often you see another self that's alien, that isn't something that you recognize in yourself.
Yeah.
And that can be even harder. And to recognize that just because your inability to see yourself in that other person doesn't mean that that's not you. That alienness is also part of you, right? That thing that you don't recognize in yourself is still the self. And that's the kind of leap that you can take when you are starting to accept yourself completely. Because you're not afraid of what other people's alien or native reflections are showing you. You accept it all, and you have the ability, you have the strength and the skills. I think it's a lot about skills too. Deep, not intellectual skills, but emotional skills, spiritual skills, something working under the surface that the personality just kind of like is the after effect of, right? And then you're learning how to balance that stuff. Okay, I don't have to be afraid of this. Okay, I don't have to be afraid of that. I have the tools to balance it. It may scare me. It may disturb me. There's lots of things in this world that are very, very disturbing. But if you have learned how to grapple with your own dark side, then you know how to grapple with new dark sides that you are exposed to. And then when people are in distress because they are having a hard time with the dark side, I say this over and over again, but being there for other people in the way that they need, not expecting them to come to you, but going to them, meeting them. That's what Jesus did. That's the pattern. That is the pattern that's been laid down before us. We do not have to make it up. It is not such undiscovered territory. It's just work. It's just the D word, right? Discipline.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming back to it over and over and over again. When you avert your eyes, when you want to give up on it, when you want to say, this is too hard. I just need to sit down with a bowl of chips and watch TV.
Yeah.
No, coming back. And like, that's fine. Sometimes you need to do that, but coming back after that, right? And saying, no, I know that deep down, I have a desire to serve others. And through that, to reflect the unity of all things.
I immediately think of my time in San Francisco when we talk about seeing people that are so outside of your experience and understanding that they do seem alien. And not only that, when you bring up, and you've brought this up before, and it's a great test or flag. I like to call them flags, but when you avert your eyes, what do you avert your eyes at? And in San Francisco, I think what bothered me most about San Francisco wasn't the poop on the street. It wasn't the open usage of heroin in the BART stations. What it was people always looking down when crime, literal crime, was right in front of them.
And suffering.
Just the word, what bothered me was the predation, the predation of others.
Well, okay.
It was,
I don't mean to put words in your mouth.
No, there was suffering and people it becomes so normal. It's there's that guy on the street again. He's been there for the last 10 years that I've lived here. But it was the fact that, one day headed home, I'm headed down into the BART station and there's this cello player there playing his cello. Some kid reaches down like he's going to put money in the cello case, but he's not going to put money in the cello case, and he grabs a bunch of money and then runs. And the station is full of people and, no one does a dang thing. I tried to stop the guy, but I was the only one in the entire BART station that had their eyes up. And I think that's what it was. I'm sure other people, if they're looking around, people would care. But that guy's getting robbed. But everyone's
yell about it.
Everyone's looking down. I was at a Starbucks. And this homeless guy walks into the Starbucks. He just walks right to the front, grabs the tip jar, and just starts walking out. No one bats an eye because everyone's looking down. Everyone doesn't want to look at the homeless guy who's walking in. Walking into the Starbucks. And, I, as kindly as I could, took it back from him and put it back on the counter. But there were so many examples of just people robbing other people. And no one had the wherewithal to look out for their neighbor or to, I don't know. That was just my biggest problem is it seemed like everyone averted their eyes. Everyone goes into San Francisco. There's drugs there. There's homelessness there. That there's mental illness. There's a bad part of town. There's a good part of it. But everyone knows what is in San Francisco and everyone avoids it when you get there.
Whereas if they were paying attention to, if they were shining the light of their awareness on it and opening their heart to it, maybe they'd have a reaction. And I think that's what they're afraid of too, is that, if I look up, if I see what's going on, if I actually register it as happening to real human beings like me, then I'd have to do something. I'd feel like I'd have to do, and that just seems like a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Oh,
and
I have a good story though. I was on the BART headed home and, this guy walks on, this older gentleman. I don't know if he was homeless or not. He didn't smell good, but he's standing up and there's not many people on the BART. Maybe it's late at night. It's late at night, right? And I think there's only 10 of us in our car. And this guy's standing up and we're getting close to a stop, and he just kind of melts. He slowly but surely falls to the ground, and then bam, he's on the ground. And I was so proud of my fellow riders. 3 young women got up and rushed to this dude. It turns out 2 of them were nurses, so they were kind of programmed to do this. The dude was having a seizure. That's what was happening. The dude was, I had no idea what was going on. I went up to try to straighten out his legs because I'm like, oh, those legs look funny. But these 2 nurses got up, and this other woman, she tried to help, but the dude wet himself. He was on the ground. It was a mess, but they acted so fast, and I was so happy. I'm like, because this was, oh my gosh, this was like a couple years after I had seen my first robbery, and I'm like, the people care. I was so excited. And
yeah,
and we helped that guy. Gosh, I mean, the police came, the paramedics came, and the ride got delayed. But I was just tickled that people react. They had their eyes up. They were watching this guy. They could see as soon as he started dropping, he was in distress, and they took action. And I just loved it. I just loved it.
Thank God, because individual citizens taking action of their own accord is our homeless policy in this country. We do not have any other policy about homeless people, but do it yourself. Like every individual making a individual decision. We don't coordinate it really like we do with things that we really care about, right? And that's really sad.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I also see the spiritual utility of it, but it's hard for me to feel like it shouldn't rely on Good Samaritans. If we don't let our financial regulation rely on Good Samaritans. We don't let our military defense rely on Good Samaritans. When it's something that we really care about, we tend to all come together and make sure that it happens. That said, I agree with you that it's a great story of people stepping in over the policy that exists, right? Like over the neglect and just reaching a hand over that.
Well, it's maybe you were alluding to this earlier, but it's recognizing that man as a person who needs help and not just sitting on the sidelines going, boy, I hope someone else figures it out, or I hope he's okay.
An inconvenience.
And I understand. I understand sometimes the challenge, you do care. People in general care, but I understand the challenge is knowing what to do or having the confidence to know what to do when others are going to be judging your actions.
Yep.
That
Absolutely.
is its own mess. That's its own mess. But
that's where you build character, right? By standing up for what you believe.
Yes.
And you are just as much of a creator as all of those people judging you.
Yeah.
Like they have it within them too. And maybe they have within themselves the ability to do better, but it's the person who uses the illusion to learn the lesson, right? Who does the old Axl Rose thing of using the illusion and engaging with the energy, with the potential in the moment to release it, and thereby show the creator something that it didn't understand about itself, something that just could just as easily have been ignored.
Yeah,
that's where the magic is.
Yeah. It takes courage.
I agree with you.
It's that old man in the arena speech by Teddy Roosevelt. It's the man in the arena. It's the person who gets in that ring, and it's the person who has the courage to do something.
The person who has the courage to charge up the hill at San Juan and kill a bunch of Spanish people who didn't want a war. But okay, all right, Jeremy.
My favorite story of him is he writes that I won't say it. He went cougar. He killed a cougar with a knife. After it's a great story. Maybe I'll try to find it and put it in the show notes. But that guy's got some interesting biographies.
He's an American character. There's no doubt about it.
I like that he got shot on the way to giving a speech, and then he just gave a speech after being shot. That's one of my favorite stories. But anyway, what a crazy guy. Well, thank you. I'm not sure how much more you have left, but you've helped.
I don't have much more. I've read some excerpts about discipline and discipline of the personality. We've talked we've told some personal anecdotes. And I don't really think that I have that much more to do, except maybe just check the show notes, because I'm going to put a few Quo, Hatan, what have you, sessions in there. Don't be afraid of the the not secure warning on the browser. I'm sure LL Research will take care of that very soon. And read for yourself. Like, don't take our word for it. Like, look into this. And if you have questions, listeners, we have a contact form. Reach out. I keep speaking for Ryan. Apologize, my man.
It's okay.
But I am very willing to engage with you. You know, part of the project that we're doing with this channeling circle is not just about channeling. It's about a wider effort to build spiritual community online, not through forums and not through like social media, but in one-on-one communication where we can really get to know each other's paths and help each other, help reflect each other. I mean, I'm just a peer of yours. I'm just another bozo on the bus, like Carla used to say. And so this project that I'm engaged in with a few other people, the Other Selves Working Group, we have a website, otherselvesworking.group. And if you go there, you can kind of see what we're about and why I'm passionate about doing this podcast of reaching out to people. But I also would like to get more feedback from people, because I want to make sure that I'm connecting. I can be a little bit abstract and arcane. I've been studying this stuff so long, and my progress that I've made has not been as much as I might like. But I want to make sure that what I'm putting down, y'all are picking up. And if that's not happening, then let me know, because I don't want to just sound smart. I want to connect with people and make sure that those who want to hear the message are hearing it.
Yeah, I know
It's not my message. It's the Confederation's message, and it's really about what's in our hearts, right?
Yeah. And we just want to connect with people, like legitimately talk with people, you know. Texting is cool, typing is cool, but talking, get in front of people, some FaceTime, and really understanding, that's where it's at, I think. And
it can lead in a lot of directions, you know? Yeah. I mean, there are other people like you out there who are trying to walk this path. They're in all different places. They're in all different portions of their lives. But the more that we can see how much we have in common with each other and help mirror to each other on our paths, so that it's not just you walking this solo discipline, you're doing this discipline alone, but you have other people that are doing it too. And you can kind of see, okay, this is something I didn't understand, or you can show somebody else something that they don't understand, and we can all help each other get home.
Well, a good session today. I'm going to relate this back again to how I think of disciplines of the body, in that, you know, you're running, you're doing your yoga, there's, you know, those basics of physical movement and physical discipline. I'm going to think of this, or tie this into the discipline of the personality, as something similar, as except applied to the spiritual path. And how am I keeping myself open? You know, what are my thought processes? What are my actions and intentions and understandings of others? And what can I do to stay on the tight and narrow path? Is that what is that what they say? The tight and narrow path, or the
straight and narrow?
Straight and narrow.
I think the more important thing is to bring yourself back to the straight and narrow when you stray, because my brother, you're going to stray. I'm going to stray. We're all going to stray. This is a very confusing world, and it's not always clear what the service to others thing to do is. But the point is not to get it right. The point is to learn. I cannot stress that enough. The point is not to be perfect. The point is to recognize that our mistakes, our stumbles, are part of the dance that is already perfect. And all we're trying to do is to know ourselves, accept ourselves, and then take that final step that is so magical of becoming the creator, recognizing our power. And then we can really be there for everybody in our lives, everybody that we meet, in a way that will transform them and will show them that it's not hopeless. in 2021 on this planet as Delta and Lambda rear their ugly heads again, and we're going to all be, you know, wearing face masks and all that. Like, this is all leading to our growth. All of the stuff we deal with in our personal lives, all of the social stuff that we deal with, the world politics, it's none of it is wasted. So be there for it.
Amen.
And while you're being there for it and doing all this stuff, do us a small favor. Stay in the love and light.